we had a technical issue, but Paul Venema has no issue whatsoever. Joins us here live in the studio. Good morning, Paul.
Prosecutors did a wonderful job in terms of what they're supposed to do as far as outlining the case. It was a pretty solid case. So what we didn't hear was Tamara Strouch, the lead attorney in this case, outlining the case. The case simply was these 4 teenagers decided that another fellow, this Silva was his name, had stolen one of their backpacks, and they were going to get it back. So they went and confronted him, and it turned into a fist fight, which turned into really not a gunfire, more of an assassination.
So, Paul, the sudden plea, it's kind of surprised everyone in that courtroom. Is that the sense? Did it come out of nowhere?
Yeah, to most of us it did, yes. Because usually when you get this deep into a trial, we've got the jury seated, both sides have had an opportunity to make closing or opening statements. So we're into the trial now, and usually if there's going to be a plea, it's either as they're picking a jury or once the jury is seated and they decide this is for real, we're going for trial.
Paul, evaluate the state's case. Was it solid enough to merit the plea?
Well, yeah, as we were talking about earlier, I think so, and I suspect that's perhaps what the defendant realized too. It was a pretty good case, and what made it probably even better was the fact that one of the co-defendants in this case was poised to testify against Samora. So that would have probably been pretty convincing in the eyes of the jury. So they outlined a pretty good case, I think.
Will he serve that full sentence of 40 years?
Well, no. Short answer, no. He will not. But there was what's called an affirmative finding made, which means a deadly weapon, affirmative finding that a deadly weapon is used. That means that he'll have to serve at least half of that, 20 years, before he's even eligible for parole. Whether or not he gets parole at the beginning of his eligibility is highly unlikely.
Well, Paul, consequently, if the trial had proceeded, what was he facing if convicted?
Well, he was looking at a life sentence. It was a 5 to 99 to life. So, and that had to be a consideration too.
Sure.
When they offered 40 years. That's a significant departure from life in prison. Yeah. So he was looking at what, if you would call it that, a pretty good deal in terms of the facts of the case and what he was facing as far as punishment is concerned.
Now, Samora was among 4 teenagers charged in this case. What happens with the others, and does his plea affect those cases?
Well, whether or not it affects them, we won't know at this point. At this point, the state's ready to go proceed against 2 of the others. The third has entered into a plea agreement. He also fired, but he's entered into a plea agreement for the lesser charge of aggravated assault with a deadly weapon. And part of that agreement called for a 20-year sentence. That deal hasn't been finalized yet. Part of his agreement was that he was going to testify against Samora, and that's of course gone now. But he's looking at probably a 20-year sentence as part of a plea deal.
Okay, so what's next, Paul?
Well, I think what's going to happen today is the other cases are going to be evaluated. The lawyers on either side are going to evaluate those other cases, and there could well be other plea agreements. Again, given the outcome of this case, if they don't plead, they're going to trial. Two of them are ready to go to trial.
Okay. Well, more on the story, of course, is online at KSAT.com with Paul's court coverage. Paul, thank you.
Thank you.
Have a good rest of the day, sir.